Welcome back to the channel. One word that you hear all the time in Christian circles is the word storm. You see this all over the place. It's kind of like a cultural Christian buzzword. You hear it on Pinterest, you hear it on Christian music, you hear it just in people's general conversation, and it's used talking about people going through a storm or some trial or difficulty in their lives. And what I want to do in today's video is look at a time when the followers of Jesus actually encountered a storm. Matthew chapter 8, 23 through 27. Let's read this together. And when he, that's Jesus, got into the boat, his disciples followed him. And behold, there arose a great storm on the sea, so that the boat was being swamped by the waves, but he was asleep. And they went and woke him, saying, "Save us, Lord, we are perishing." And he said to them, "Why are you afraid, O you of little faith?" Then he arose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. And the men marveled, saying, "What sort of man is this, that even the winds and the sea obey him?" I want to notice a couple things about this text that are really interesting. And the first one is that Jesus is the first one in the boat. Right, so Jesus leads the way, and it says that his disciples followed him. And so it is in the act of following Jesus that the disciples wind up in the situation that they're going to be in a little bit later out on the sea. But Jesus knows exactly where he's leading them. Jesus knows for a fact that he is leading these men into a storm that is going to threaten their very existence, and they're going to be terrified when it happens. But he goes through with it anyway. So here's the real question. Why would Jesus lead his disciples into a position like this? Why would Jesus lead anybody into a position like this? We seem to have this default position and mindset that Jesus and God should always lead us in the peaceful, calm pastures and never into the storm. But Jesus is doing the exact opposite here. Sometimes we get angry at God because we find ourselves in tough situations, and yet here we see Jesus walking his disciples right into a tough situation. And it was their obedience to Jesus that got them in that spot, not their disobedience. I think the reason that Jesus does this becomes evident in the second part of this short text, and that is because these apostles, these disciples, need to have their faith refined. These 12 men had already done and exhibited faith beyond kind of everybody else in the multitudes that followed Jesus. Think about it. Jesus has just finished talking to some people who have made excuses for why they can't follow Jesus. The apostles now are following Jesus full time. We would look at them and probably say, wow, they have great faith. But Jesus says, we need to build this. It needs to be greater. You need to have a better understanding of how secure you are when you are with me. And so sometime later, out in the middle of the Sea of Galilee, the apostles are soaked, the rain's coming down, the waves are upon them, and they think the ship is going down and they're going to die, and Jesus doesn't care. But then, all of a sudden, Jesus stands up, rebukes the sea, and the apostles are stunned. Do you remember those people who didn't follow Jesus because they had the excuses? Where were they that night? Probably tucked, snug in their beds, warm, on the shore, in their houses. Nothing threatened them. I'm sure that when those apostles were in the midst of that storm and Jesus was sleeping, they would have gladly traded places with the person sleeping snug in his bed over on the shoreline. But I'm also almost certain that when Jesus stood up and silenced the sea, that there is no place that they would have rather been and no place where they would have felt more secure than in that boat with Jesus. It's difficult to say exactly the impact that that situation and that storm had on the apostles and their courage and confidence and faith. One thing that we do know is that the 12 apostles weathered great storms early in the church. And we know that Jesus here is using this as a refining moment to make his people of faith into exactly what he wanted them to be. They had faith in the beginning, but he was going to make it even greater. And it's by enduring the storm that they received that refinement from God. When we are going through some kind of a storm, we tend to become bitter at people who have it easier than us. And that's not the right attitude to have. I want you to think about your situation in that storm the way that we looked at these two parties in this text, the apostles versus the people who were safe on the land. Yes, they were safe, but they missed the opportunity, and they missed the magnificent glory that was displayed by God in the midst of their storm. And which party came out better in the end? It was the apostles who got to have their faith empowered and refined by God to make them something greater for the future. Let me know if there's any more lessons that you find out of this text, verses 23 through 27. It's a great text, and there's tons of lessons. But if you like this video, or you know somebody who's going through the storm or having a difficult time, share it with them. Comment down below if you have anything to say. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'll see you guys next time.